Good evening. Welcome to this gentle, honest moment. This moment we share together, a quiet, settled time to be with the world as it is, to be with our lives as they are. A time to acknowledge the spectrum of emotions that we feel in this season of Christmas. To be present to the joys and the sorrows of our Christmas memories and our Christmas hopes. I'm joined in welcoming you tonight by my teammate, Chris New, from his home. And here in this space at SSUC with me, Pam and Janice join me in welcoming you as they offer us the gift of music from this space. Brett and Dara welcome you from the booth, helping make this happen with their technological assistance. We'll also have the presence of Rochelle and Carolyn and Micah, who have prepared music for us for tonight's gathering. For many, Christmas is not the most wonderful time of the year. For all of us, it is most undoubtedly the most weighted time of the year. A season of expenses and expectations, a nostalgic season of longing for what was and is no longer, or for what might have been, what we hoped for that will not be, or for what we risk losing even yet. This is a season when we feel our losses even more acutely, and our fears grow larger. For many, this Christmas will be different. It will be more solitary for most, sacrificing time with friends and family in order to keep one another safe in this pandemic. For some, it will be a Christmas of deep memory, a first Christmas since death has come to someone we love. For others, it will be a time to looking to the future in the hopes that next Christmas will be easier, will be an opportunity to gather, will be more like Christmases past. And for yet others, this Christmas will be painful and poignant and precious. It will be a final Christmas together, knowing there won't be other Christmases to celebrate with one another, that change and loss are coming quickly down the road to meet us. For some, this is a time of great stress, of economic instability, job losses, and the significant stresses of insecurity of income. For almost all, this is an anxious time. It's a time of deep grief as we face into the magnitude of loss personally and socially and globally that we are all experiencing. The loss of lives to this virus that wasn't even on our radar this time last year. The loss of lives to tragedy and violence, to age and disease, to accidents and acts of nature, losses of employment and purpose, losses of liberty and dignity. Amid whatever is missing from our lives, we look for the spark of possibility, of healing, and of hope. And we remember the long story of light. The long story in which we take our place, born of chaos and mystery. The safe place in the universe that we find ourselves, just the right distance from our great light, where the shelter of night and the sun that scatters the darkness, without fail, keep us company all the days of our lives. And so we kindle a flame for hope. The hope that surprises us. The sparks of wisdom that light our way and teach us again and again that the hope of the world rests not in might or cruelty, but in love that burns relentlessly, even in broken hearts and a broken world. In our songs and stories, in the community we create with one another, which is not just virtual, but is real. May we find a spark of strength and a sliver of courage to light our way with one another. We take this moment to pause with one another, to share a prayer. I invite you to give it your voice as well as we offer these words together, our prayer with one another. In the emptiness, may we hold space. In the midst of cold, may we offer warmth. In the midst of grief, may there be comfort. In the midst of cruelty, may we express kindness. In the midst of guilt, may we know forgiveness. In the midst of memories, may we discover joy. In the midst of fear, may there be courage. In the midst of despair, may we touch our strength. In the midst of this season, may we find peace. May we open to the possibilities of hope, peace, joy, and love.
The Cure by Albert Hufstekler. We think we get over things. We don't get over things. Or say we get over the measles, but not a broken heart. We need to make that distinction. The things that become part of our experience never become less a part of our experience. How can I say it? The way to get over a life is to die. Short of that, you move with it. Let the pain be pain, not in the hope that it will vanish, but in the faith that it will fit in, find its place in the shape of things, and be then not any less pain, but true to form. Because anything natural has an inherent shape and will flow towards it. And a life is as natural as a leaf. That's what we're looking for, not the end of a thing, but the shape of a thing. Wisdom is seeing the shape of your life without obliterating, without getting over a single instant of it. May we find wisdom for our living in these words from the poet. The Christmas story contains more than one tragedy. A government that would force their citizens to travel all at the same time to their ancestral homes for the purpose of a census, regardless of circumstance. The lack of hospitality that turns away a woman in labor to the harsh night. A leader grasping to power, desperately murdering children to preserve the security of his reign. Our griefs also run the spectrum, from global crises and poor political leadership to personal losses, deaths, and griefs of all kinds. The cure for all these losses in our lives isn't, offers our poet, to get over them. The cure isn't the beauty of a newborn baby or a perfect Christmas. The cure isn't even time, which they say heals all wounds. But no. We move into an openness to healing by recognizing pain as pain. Not in the hope that it will go away, but in the hope that it will fit in and find its place in the shape of our lives. The pain of our grief, our challenges, the terrible losses that define life, they don't cease being painful, even as time ticks on. But they find their shape in the form of our living. Just as we don't, quote, bounce back from the times that dent and ding us, we don't go back to normal, but instead find ways to move through and incorporate them into our living. So too do we seek not to find an end to our grief and our challenge, but to find the shape of it. When we can see life's shape, with our joy and our sadness, with our losses and our gains, our failures and our successes all together, we can see our way to finding our new shape. We find it in our life, in the living of our days as they move onward. You know, the tragedies we witness, the losses we suffer, the difficulties of our relationships, our mistakes, our failures, the sadness of our isolation and separation, our emotions, our history, our grief, we don't have to get over any of them. But perhaps to find the wisdom and the shape of them is our goal. That's not an easy task for any of us. It's a daily relearning and a daily practice of discipline. That work leads to a place, though, if we can do it, of greater peace, where we understand that our great griefs, that they are us and we are them. And in our acknowledgement of their shaping of us, they have the potential to strengthen us, to make us wiser, to allow us to be compassionate and wounded healers, all of us. And so we light this second candle tonight, the candle of peace, that we might find peace in our histories, in our wounds, and in the shape of our loss.
Where are you, Christmas? Why can't I find you?
The words of Naomi Shihab Nye, an American Palestinian poet. This is her poem entitled Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in the moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it's only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you've been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. These words come to us that they might be for us wisdom for our living. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must also know sorrow as the other deepest thing. I learned the truth of the poet's words when my father died. The depth of my sorrow was matched only by the depth of the kindnesses I experienced. A cousin who brought me a toothbrush at the end of a long day of vigil and brought me the gentleness of her presence. Another who brought me a favorite coffee after a long night at my dad's bedside. And yet another who came in just the right moment, taking time away from her day at work to sit with me as we shared together childhood memories of our earliest years together. And there was the kindness of my spouse, thousands of miles away, who took care of things at home before catching the last connecting flight to arrive in the middle of the night. And then there was the kindness of dear friends who sacrificed a night's sleep and at great cost and inconvenience crossed the country on the red eye to be at my dad's memorial service. And another who sent flowers to create beauty in the space of my dad's home that was growing more and more empty with each day's dismantling. Then there were the kind words of so many who emailed and called, sent beautiful cards to express their support. Then there were friends who cared for our home and the animals that we share our home with. Extended family who provided a home for my dad's furnishings. The kindness of my teammate Chris, who wrote new lyrics so we could sing an old familiar tune at my dad's memorial service. A coworker who kindly prepared the order of service. A friend who offered strawberries and cheese and the beauty of her presence at just the right moment as I came home to re-enter my life here. I met the depths of kindness in the depths of sorrow. When I read the stories that give us this season, I'm struck by the hardship that shapes them. Despite our hallmark versions of gentle light and softly falling snow and serene faces, this is not a sweet, sweet story. It's a story set in a harsh time where citizens are displaced by the abuse of power by an occupying distant nation, forcing long journeys to ancestral towns, to an ancient world where you only conduct a census if you're going to raise taxes. In the world of the story, it signals that the poor, like these parents and these shepherds of the story, are going to get poorer. It places a couple expecting their first child on a demanding journey by foot to a strange town where they don't appear to have any family. They are not well-to-do. They lack security and they lack support, and they're about to bring a child into the world in a dangerous time. Despite what our carols and lullabies imply about this story, it's a story populated by those who are deeply afraid, populated by a paranoid king who sees threats to his power everywhere, shepherds who are afraid of the night sky, a young woman who is startled and fearful to discover she's pregnant, a man who is afraid to marry this woman. And these are some of the characters we know in these stories. But what of the kindness of the invisible characters who drive the plot forward? What kindnesses of friends and strangers would have allowed these characters to complete a difficult journey? The road from Nazareth to Bethlehem would have been populated with old and young, some who could travel easily, others who would need a lot of help. What kindnesses would have to arise to make that long road possible for one another? We've often cast our pageants with a rude or mean innkeeper, turning a desperate couple out into the street, but can we imagine that this place of birth that we visit every year in the world of this story was the generous and kind gift of a stranger doing what they could, offering what they had? Can we imagine that the kindness of a local midwife stepping into the breach of an absent mother or sister would be there to help? Can we not imagine that this story depends on unseen kindnesses of strangers stepping into the needs and meeting them, bringing what was needed? Can we imagine the tender gravity of kindness that is implicit in this story. You know, whether Christmas is blue with sadness, white like the Christmas card world, or red with merriment, whether we're living in a yellow or an orange or a red zone of our country, whether we're sheltering alone or we're sheltering with a full household, whether these are demanding days or empty hours, what could matter more than to be kind, to be kind, to be kind to ourselves, to those who are grieving, to those who are carrying their own long, wide loads, to those who are lonely, to those who are afraid, to those who are sick, to those who are afraid of getting sick, to those who are dying. Surely, as this story depends upon the kindness of many, our lives depend upon the kindness of many. We may be sheltering in place, staying safe and distant from one another, but kindness is not in quarantine. We know we can't live long without oxygen. And we know that without kindness, our species, our planet, it really doesn't have much of a chance. So in the spaces carved by sadness, in this season, let's open to the kindness that waits for us there. And so we kindle a flame for joy. The joy of simple kindnesses, the ones that burn brightly in our memory, the ones we've received, the ones we've given. And as we open to the ones that remain possible for us, even now, even in these pandemic days and nights, surely our experience and our imagination offers us countless ways to express kindness and invite joy.
Out in the night, with myriad stars above me, I walk alone on a
In the darkness of this night, we welcome the light we create together as we enter a time of prayer and meditation. You're invited to light a candle, or to place your candle prominently in front of you. Settle comfortably, and focus on the flame as the center and symbol of this time. Let's be safe to share our pain, to grieve the losses in our lives and the wounds of our world, and to help one another live in the light of love and grace. This light is for those for whom the darkness is deep, those who have been deeply hurt and who protect their tender hearts, those whose hope is diminished. As we look into the light, may we find our way past cynicism, to acknowledge hurt and pain, and to know that strength is its product. We rekindle our perseverance that lets us embrace the wisdom and strength of our hurts, so that hope shines. No one is left in the darkness alone. This light is also for those who are vulnerable, without adequate shelter and food or work, for dejected youth and neglected children, for fearful seniors, for victims of violence and those living with trauma or abuse, for refugees seeking safety and finding challenge and disappointment. As we look into the light, may we affirm the dignity and meaning of every life. May we offer the kind word and support that makes a moment easier for another person. May part of our Christmas observance be focused on actions and relief of the vulnerable among us. No one is left alone in the darkness. This light is also for those whose loneliness blankets this season and carves empty corridors deep within. For those for whom the burdens of loss and grief are heavy. As we look into the light, may we find peace even amid our deepest sorrows, and give shelter to one another in the midst of heartache and heartbreak. And so as we sit in the glow of our candlelight, we know the wisdom and witness of our love's fullness. We know our light shines and makes a difference in the darkness. We pray as those born of light and seeking light. Amen.
We hope that you will join us as we sing together about our hope, our peace, our joy and love, even as we seek it. Sing with us in these words of Linnea Good.
This dancing flame of Joy is a candle on our journey. Joy is the swinging and the leap. Under the clouded skies of winter, this laughing flame of joy will keep. For we are a people of a story of stars that sing and love that cries. And though these nights are getting longer, the path is there before us. Love is a candle on our journey. Love is the holding and the flight. Around this aching earth of winter, this tender flame of love will light.
The birth stories we celebrate in this season are stories that remind us that shelter is often found in unlikely places, that we are shelter for one another in the pandemic of COVID and in the epidemic of grief. So we kindle a flame of love. Love that shelters us with simple kindnesses. Love that helps us care for one another across the distance. Love that doesn't depend on geography or proximity. Love that holds. Love that endures. And in the spirit of John O'Donohue, these words of blessing: so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life.